All right, of course. Welcome back to another episode of Sin TV Now, where I bring you smart, intelligent news. We talk about real issues from the multicultural perspective in regards to pop culture and geek culture. I know it sounds different every time I say it, but that's just how it goes. Okay, so today's episode, we're going to continue our journey into what I like to call Sinoween, which is much better than Halloween, right? But it's a Halloween celebration throughout the month of October for Sin TV Now. So we're going to be playing the scary games. You're going to see me cry for Jesus. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And then on top of that, I also will be getting into our very, what I like to call geek tough issue today. And that is talking all about diversity and inclusion. And is it necessary to have safe spaces for people who feel left out in the geek community? Is it necessary to have these safe spaces? So we'll be getting into that as well. So let's get this game started here where we last left off here, because I've been having fun with this game. Let me tell you. Anything with fine men, of course. Alright, so we got a login bonus, which is awesome. I'm so happy to see you again. Well, I'm happy to see you too, Rupert. Alright, we got cake! And you know, any fat girl like myself will love some cake. So, alright, so we got some cake, which is awesome. And there's some other stuff here. Okay, so then Daniel will give us something nice next time. Okay, well that's good to know. Alright, so let's go to home. Alright. Oh, we got some tokens too. That's awesome. Okay, so let's accept those. Oh, we have a lot that we have to accept. Okay, so let's accept that. The cake. We got a gold key. We got a love ticket. A story ticket. Gold key again. Story ticket. Story ticket. Alright, so we accepted everything. Okay. Alright. Ah, that's really funny. Okay. What's going on here? Okay, let's go back. Alright, there we go. See, I'm still learning my way around this game. Alright, so let's continue this story. When we last left off, Rupert was getting kind of sassy with Mina, and then Alfred, who is like apparently my man, even though like I haven't really acknowledged it yet, but you know how that goes. You know how that goes. Alright, so let's continue the story here of Blood and Roses. Alright. I just enjoy doing voices and stuff. It's so funny, alright? But before we get into it here, let's get a little riot talk out of the way, kind of catching you up with what's been going on with yours truly. So first off, I was so excited for today. I got some new games. Like I got like 3 new games. So I actually bought like 6 new games like within the last like 4 weeks. Because I'm trying to really build up my PS3 collection. Because I'm not sure, for those of you who are like retro gamers like myself, PS3 games are starting to, especially like the Japanese RPGs and stuff like that, they're starting to become more and more obsolete. So I got a couple of games. I'm not going to tell you what they are until they get here. But it was supposed to come today. But then something happened, I don't know what, but it's not going to get here until tomorrow. So I was kind of pissed about that. I was like, what the heck? I know that's insensitive of me to be pissed off on something that was so basic, but it's just because this is a game that I have wanted for a long time, and I never thought that I would be able to get this particular game. And then I've been kind of lazy this week. I like took off like, 3 to 4 days of working like out. But for some reason lately, I have just felt really lethargic, really tired, and just completely out of it. I don't know why, but it's just like I just want to sleep all day. It's just really strange. And then, okay, I had the best thing that has happened to me this week. And I have a special announcement that I hinted at it a little bit on my Twitter, which is at SINTV Now. But this is what happened. So, here's the announcement. I have decided to do a audio version of SINTV Now. So many of you have been pushing me to do this. You're like, your show would be really awesome if you did like an audio version. So what I'm gonna do is the show is gonna be weekly. I'm not gonna have a set schedule because I'm a grad student and it's like, and I work like all the time, okay? So it's not going to be set, but I assure you it will be once a week, and I will have fabulous interviews. And if I don't have interviews, we're going to get those juicy news stories, okay? Whether it's entertainment, giving a multicultural perspective on something, it's just so important, okay? To me, I feel that it's really time for people like me who have always felt left out in the geek community to really start addressing some of these issues and taking a very intellectual approach to social commentary. And I'm not saying that it hasn't been done already. It's just that I think the show will be very unique, and I'm going to be kicking it off hopefully next week. But I'm going to be doing this audio show once a week, and I am really excited. Like, I am so excited, okay? And this is what ended up happening. Is I ended up having the chance, and this was so awesome. I had the chance to talk to Sasha Mobley, okay? And Sasha Mobley, not only is she an amazing, like, she is such a geek, and I love her deeply for it, but she wrote this book that is called The Strong Woman Trap, a feminist guide for getting your life back. And I got a chance to talk to her today. And when I tell you, that is probably hands down one of my top 10 favorite interviews that I have ever done for this show. She was just so profound, so knowledgeable, and she kept it real. I love people who do not have a filter and are not afraid to express their discourse, like myself. I think it's really time for the diversity and inclusion conversation to be talked about from the feminist perspective, or from a multicultural perspective, being a person of color, or, being talked about from the LGBTA, I always say alphabet soup because there's so many acronyms to it. But I really think it is time to have these type of conversations. And to not to ostracize people, but we'll get into it later here. So let's get into playing this fine game, shall we? Okay, let me tell you again, Mina. Kiss me. Ooh. No, I'm being... I am being so basic. However, many times you ask me, it'll always be the same answer. No. Rupert shrugs as I refuse his request outright. How disappointing. She hasn't become my belonging either. That's like the face he's giving, that like face, right? Okay. Our power doesn't work on her. We must try again. No. Right, she is hard to deal with. Giving up already? Of course not. I'll think of what to do next. What are they talking about? Staring at them, I'm confused, and I see Rupert stretching his hands towards me. Well, for now. My body starts to tremble as he holds my hand. No, I'm being so corny. What are you doing? Let go. Alarmed to the point you're shaking, eh? Well, oh well. It can't be helped. Rupert lets go of my hand easily and starts to walk. I'll show you around the castle. Come with me, Mina. I love how I make him like super flamboyant and sovereign, like at the same time. Like, it's ridiculous. Show me around the castle? I am surprised by his sudden offer. But I wish for nothing better to look at the rose garden. So this is our opportunity to check out that rose garden. But I can't follow him straight away, thinking that there might be a catch to it. Wait, Rupert, you come with us now. He is so demanding. It's like, get a cough drop, Alfred. Just calm down, seriously. Running after Rupert, Alfred stops to look back at me. I know. I see my voice is just all over, right? I know. It seems better to be obedient, and I start to walk a few steps behind them. Ba ba ba! No. Drama! No. I recognize the place where they have taken me to. Though I was so scared yesterday because nobody was here. It's lively with people today. This is the hotel lobby where we welcome our guests. Hotel. Alright, so we are at the end of chapter 3. My English is bad. No, but we are at the end of chapter 3. We got 10 chapters, people. This is a very long game, but we're gonna get through it. Yeah! Okay, so let's take a little break here, of course, and let's get into our juicy topic of the day, where we are discussing, is it necessary to have inclusion and safe spaces in the geek community for people, like, for example, who feel that they're left out, you know, or for example, like the LGBT, you know, QIA community, or people like myself, you know, a woman of color who is plus size, or, you know, someone who may have a disability and they feel that, you know, that disability is something that people would chastise them for, you know? And this is something I've always wanted to talk about because it reflects personally on my story. Because I know growing up for me as a, you know, as a person of color who, you know, was gaming, at the time that I was growing up, it was not cool to be a geek. So to this upcoming generation, consider yourselves blessed and lucky. I'm not saying that this generation does not have its challenges, because we can see, especially in American society and throughout the world, this younger generation is having a lot of challenges with, you know, with dealing with just acceptance and people just respecting this generation coming up, you know? And it's kind of caused a lot of conflicts with the other generations that are, or the previous generations that are present. So for me, you know, in my day, you know, in my time, being a geek was not cool. It was something that honestly I had to conceal. And I kept it inside of myself. And it was not until I got to probably about like high school, going like later high school, going and transitioning into college, that I finally felt like I was, you know, emerging. And I know it sounds cliche, but it was like in my earlier part of high school and, you know, growing up, I had to suppress my geekiness, you know? Now, there were some people that I knew who were, like, really open, and they thought their, you know, being a geek was, like, the coolest thing ever. But what would happen, especially, where I went to school, you would get beat up for it, or, you would get teased for it. And there was many times that it's like, as much as I tried to conceal my geekiness, maybe people could just smell it on me or something like that, all jokes aside. But maybe I was just permeating this, and I dealt with a lot. And then I had 2 strikes against me too, was because I was a person of color that had geek interests. And here's the thing about inclusion and safe spaces, okay? Inclusion does not mean segregation, okay? Because I think a lot of times when people think about this issue, and this is not me generalizing because I know that everybody thinks differently, but for this discussion today, I just want to be clear is that there's a lot of misconceptions about what inclusion is and what a safe space is. Inclusion and a safe space, they're intertwined, okay? And then on top of that, it does not mean segregation. Just because there is a safe space or a safe environment for people to be themselves, that doesn't necessarily always mean that they're trying to make this a race issue, or able-bodied versus non-able-bodied people, or LGBT versus straight people. That's not why there are these safe spaces that are made. The reason why some of these safe spaces or organizations that are culturally based are made and created is due to the fact that sometimes our voices as being different people, regardless of race, but being geeks and being told that we're outsiders and we're freaks and we're weirdos, because of that, we've had to create our own organizations so that we feel that our voices are being acknowledged, okay? And from all of this, I would like to say this, okay? One of the issues that I've noticed in the geek community is, oh, of course we have Anthony. Hi, welcome to the show. And as I was saying, one of the issues that I feel personally in the geek community is sometimes the faces of the geek community, it doesn't always give an accurate portrayal. And this is what I mean by that. For example, the lack of diverse characters in video games. Don't get me wrong, people will say Storm and people will say Lawbreakers and things like that, but those are just not even a handful. And then people will say Assassin's Creed, and people will say all of these games, and Fallout, but that's still a handful. Okay? There's this idea called intersectionality, and what that is what you do for one, you do for all. So for me, growing up, the only kind of geeks that I would see were geeks that were white. And this is not me saying like, all white people are bad, let's clarify, but it was just the geeks that I saw were white, and then that became the standard, and like white geeks were comfortable because of the privileges that they had, because we still, like, I would say in American society, there's still a privilege system that is kind of set in place, and that also can be applied to the geek community. If you're not the right type of geek, then you're not acceptable in certain environments. And this is where that challenge kind of comes from. And Anthony, you are so sweet to say that I look good, and I'm glad. It's been a long time since we have talked here on the show, so I appreciate you being here. And that's it. I've never heard that term, blurred. Blurred is a combination of black and nerd, so you consider yourself a blurred. I like that. That's really cool. But that's been a challenge, is that, when people think of geeks, they mainly think of, what is popular, and that is mainly white geeks. Now, this is not me trying to make this, because anytime you try to talk about these issues, people take it to be like you're hating on, on said cultural group, or you're trying to create a segregation. That's not what I'm trying to create. I'm just trying to open up a dialogue of a reality that some of us have to face. Like, let me tell you, there are times when I go into like a video game store and no one will say anything to me because they're kind of surprised that a woman of color would be interested in these things, okay? And I know that depending on where you live or depending where you're from, there are going to be exceptions to the rule. I acknowledge that. But we also have to talk about this other side of the conversation where geeks of color or geeks with disabilities, or I can't even imagine being a geek and being LGBT, IA on top of that. Like, that is a definite challenge right there, and then you're being a person of color too. And even if you're not a person of color, even if you're a part of the LGBTIA community and you game, there are a lot of unique challenges that you have to deal with. And from my experiences of being a geek of color that games, that does this show, I am constantly dealing with people being shocked that I'm, that I'm doing this or I'm knowledgeable about these things. The only reason, and here's the thing, do I know everything about geek culture? No. Do I know everything there is to every game that I play? No. I take the time to do the research and understand the history, but it's just, I think sometimes people of color don't always want to be associated with the stereotypes, okay? Like I would say, in certain, and I'm going to clarify, in certain aspects of the geek community, because I don't want to create this generalization of the geek community, all right? There are wonderful people in this community. However, there hasn't really been a lot of decent conversations about what I'm talking about. There's been in little bits and pieces, but where is that complete conversation, So for example, with African and African American people, when it comes to gaming, people just assume that we just want to play Grand Theft Auto and we want to play NBA, 2K. Nothing wrong with that. If you play those games, fine. But there's more to us than that. There are black and African, African American, whatever term you want to use for us. That's just, for me, I say African American, or black. But I prefer African American. That's just me. But there are African American gamers that play all different types of games. And the question that I've always kind of been trying to answer is, why are we not acknowledged in the same retrospect as the white gamers are? And how they get that respect that we don't? And is it because of stereotypes? Or is it because some people may stereotypically assume that we are just trying to pull the race card? Because I see that a lot. Like, some of the comments that I get doing this show from time to time, I get these comments of people thinking that I'm trying to like culturally appropriate, or I am adding to the segregation. But what people don't realize is that the more of us that are visible, the more people with disabilities, regardless of race, the more different people, okay? Even here on Twitch, they have something called Twitch Unity, or hashtag Twitch Unity, that kind of talks about that, and addressing the inclusion and the diversity, and people, everybody can game and everybody can enjoy, doing what we do. So to me, at the end of the day, inclusion is not segregation. Having a safe space is not saying that, we don't want people of other cultural groups, And I can't speak, let me clarify too, I'm not speaking for the whole black community. I am only speaking for myself and the experiences that I have had. The younger generation, I'm telling you, you guys are very blessed that you're growing up in a time that it's okay to be a geek, And geek culture actually has been normalized in a way. It's been normalized to the point where you have programs that talk about it. Like when I was growing up, there was nothing like that, barely. And there were no role models who looked like me, or there was barely any role models that really kind of had the strength that I have to talk about these things per se. There were a couple, you know, but geek culture now is something where it's so straightforward and it's a beautiful thing. So why are we not having these conversations? I would love to go to more conventions and see panels talking about this. Having, you know, someone that is white, having someone that looks like me, having someone who is LGBT, having somebody, you know, who is a African American male, and just having this conversation open and honestly. But the problem comes with a couple things, like I talked about earlier. There's racism, there's just pure hatred and ignorance that's going on in society right now. That is the reason why the only way for anybody to have these type of conversations is having to move it to a safe space. So I've talked all this talk, right? Let's get into these. Anthony is ridiculous. He's like, church, and I'm like, yeah. So let's get into these definitions, because it's one thing to talk about this topic and I can sit here and just, you know, it sounds like I'm complaining, but I can do that all day. But let's really get down to business and talk about these definitions, okay? So what is inclusion? This is coming from Luther College, okay, at luther.edu. Inclusion is the active and intentional and ongoing engagement with diversity. Such engagement involves individual relationships as well as connections that are made through, now they're using it more in an academic and educational sense, so made through the curriculum and co-curricular activities, and in broader communities where the basis of belonging may be intellectual, social, cultural, or geographic, as well as connectiveness based on affinity and common interest. Inclusion is a mindset that encourages learning communities to initiate positive ways to increase awareness of cultural differences and to promote a welcoming climate for everyone. Can I say this again? A welcoming climate for everyone. Okay, so me as a, you know, African American person or African person, I want inclusion. I don't want a separation of races. I don't want that. I don't want for, you know, to just have all these kind of segmentation. I want for everybody to come together. I want for white people and people with disabilities and for everybody to come together and have these talks. Now, I know it is, when you talk about inclusion, when you talk about diversity, it is a very uncomfortable thing to talk about, but it takes, if you take the chance to really talk about it, it opens up your awareness and it brings a sense of like a resolution per se. Okay, I cannot change anybody's mind because people are going to be the way that they are and people are going to think the way that they do. But what I believe in is social equality, and that is having these conversations where everybody feels that they are a part of something. That includes white people, that includes people with disabilities, that includes everybody. But it just breaks my heart when people feel sad that they're not part of a conversation. Or for me, for example, I feel sad, when a white person may tell me that it's hard for them, to talk to me because of maybe some of the experiences that they've had in the past where they wanted to talk to someone that was a person of color, but it was a challenge because that person may have assumed the wrong thing about them and vice versa. Because it happens both ways, people. So if we're really going to have social inclusion, just like what it says here, we have to create a welcoming environment for everybody to feel included. Okay, inclusion is not segregation. It's not, okay, let's put the blacks over here and let's put the white people over here. It's not about a privilege system. It's not about, you know, who's better than who. I understand that's the reality of society, but we can break down those walls if people are willing to listen. And that's something that I have had to learn over time, you know, as I've had to confront my prejudices and my misconceptions, you know, about how I felt about culture. And being able to actively listen is not an easy thing to do, because you will always have your core values and your belief system, and these are all things that make up the makeup of who you are, which also plays into that intersectionality piece. But if we really want for the geek community to not be seen as this specialized thing, you know, and there are different parts of the geek community. It's not only about games and anime and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. It's about having these conversations. And I would like to personally commend the people like myself and many others who have the guts to have these conversations. Because what people don't realize is when you talk about innovation and when you talk about change, you're putting yourself at risk. And what I mean by that is anytime you have these type of conversations, people tend to take it the wrong way. It's like, take a chance, sit back, and listen to what that person is saying. For me, I would love for a geek community where age doesn't matter. It blows my mind how older geeks get discriminated sometimes. Geek culture is not only for the younger generation, it should be for everybody. And that breaks my heart when I see older geeks, these same geeks that really took a risk. Because being a geek back in the day, people, it was something that you didn't proclaim, and you had to do it in some environments you had to do it secretly. Like, you had to do it secretly. People would meet in secret places just because, like a safe space, because people did not understand, like some folks did not understand, not to generalize, but some people did not understand why is it that these grown people want to come together and play a game called Dungeons and Dragons and not and you know, they want to play this game but they can't physically see what's going on. Like, why are, like, that's so, you know, stupid. So that's why sometimes these safe spaces are made. And this is outside the context of schools and colleges. Geeks have had to make their own safe spaces, especially LGBTA, people of color, and people with disabilities, or anybody who doesn't fit, because there is a very stereotypical geek spectrum. And if you don't fit that spectrum, you get left out of the conversation, or you just get left out, period. And for me, that's how I feel as a person of color sometimes in the geek community. Yes, I'm a part of it because I choose to be a part of it, because I want to be proactive and talk about these things. But I get left out because I'm too proactive. And what people don't understand is me standing up and trying to give a proper voice to these issues. You put yourself at risk because people just want to see the negative of what you're saying, and they don't always want to see the positive, you know. Anthony is hilarious. He's like, geek was like the N-word of the 90s. Yes, I agree. Like, I remember reading about that, like how you know, from my research, how like geek was just not a cool thing. Now everybody's like, oh, I'm a geek. And I'm like, really? You're gonna toss that word around so easily like that? Do you really understand? And this is not me. Maybe I'm coming off a little bit elitist, I'll be honest. But it's like, sometimes when I hear people say that, I'm just like, do you understand what it means to be a geek? Like, do you understand the sacrifices of the geeks before you? Where they had to meet in like underground basements to play Dungeons and Dragons because it was not cool. Like, now you can play Dungeons and Dragons anywhere. Nobody's gonna bother you, you know, per se, you know, unless they want to be a jerk or something. But like back in those times, like reading about it, you know, and like LARPing and stuff like that, for example, that was not cool to be a LARPer unless you were around people who did it. But there were times that LARPers had to do that stuff in secret, per se, because it wasn't cool. Now, you can be a LARPer, you can dress up, you know, and this is not to say these things don't go on, because they do, okay? But still, it's a much better time. So that's why it's like, come on, if you're a geek, take the time to understand geek history. Like, I'm taking that time to understand the geeks before me that have had to, you know, put themselves at risk, put themselves out there. People got beat up for this stuff, you know? And I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer, you know? But Anthony also agrees with me here and says, yeah, I hate when people say that too. I hate that. Like when, you know, let's say you at your local, you know, gaming store or whatever, your geek store, whatever it may be, and you see this person maybe you've never seen before, you know? And you start to have a conversation with them and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a geek. And they're just like throwing the word around so loosely, you know? And for me, I have to take a step back and I'm like, look, real geeks don't always say that they're a geek, you know? Many geeks don't even say, I say I'm a geek because that's just how I am, you know? But many geeks don't even say they're a geek. And here's the other thing I want to talk about too, to kind of backtrack a little bit before we get back into the story here, is no one has to prove their geek credibility, okay? Can I say that openly and freely? I am so sick and tired of me having to prove my geek credibility. If I say that I'm a geek, I'm a geek. If I like anime, I don't have to like all the popular anime. I can like anime and still be a person who loves the anime medium. If I play, you know, Final Fantasy, I don't have to play all the Final Fantasies to be a true Final Fantasy fan. You know? And that's something too that I have to struggle with too, and I would say as a woman too, it's hard because like if I go into like you know, a gaming or geek kind of store, you know, depending on the store, I feel this kind of like, you know, you don't belong here because you don't, and then you like have to look geeky. I'm sorry, but geeks in 2017 are looking fierce out here. They are taking care of themselves. Gone are the days of the geeks with the bad BO and the sweaty glasses and the social awkwardness. Many of us are very well-spoken people, very well put together, stylish, fashionable, and fierce. I do not have to be a person that is weak and timid, you know? It's so stupid to me. Oh, that's cool, and Anthony says he loves anime too. So with that being said, we'll get into part 2 here. I got a really interesting article about safe spaces.